One of the things that I really want to stress as we're getting into this is that Annie and I are only expert levels up to about 14 years. There's new problems that are coming that we need to face together. There's new challenges that are coming, and that might be health, that might be financial. We haven't faced some of these things together, maybe a little bit of health and maybe a little bit of financial. But for the most part, our lives have been pretty good in those regards. And so when you listen to counselors, I've gone to marriage counselors and asked them, how long have you been married? Oh, I'm not married. Oh, how many kids do you have? Oh, I don't have any kids.
Right.
What am I doing sitting here in front of you? You don't know what you're talking about. Or a marriage counselor that's coming on and they're talking about how great they are, but they're at year number 2. Well, we're doing great at year number 14. Do you know what I mean? So we don't have it figured out. But to this point, in this small window, we've got some things figured out. And that's where I want to come from. We're not marriage experts at year 16 because we haven't got there yet. Mm-hmm. But up to now, we're still married. I mean, at what level of happiness are we? That's the question, right? But I'm happy. I'm working on my happiness. I think one of the reasons that we're still together is because we both decided early on that I'm not in charge of making Annie happy. Mm-hmm. I'm only in charge of one person's happiness, and he's out of control. That guy is a lunatic. You know what I mean? I'm in charge of Rob, and I'm barely in charge of him, and I'm only actually in charge of how he reacts to things. Right. And he's not even in charge of like the things that are happening in his life. He's only in charge of his reactions. That being the case, it took a lot of pressure off of me because in my first relationship, I felt responsible for making my wife happy. And because I worked so hard on making her happy and it wasn't working, that was her belief too. That was my job to make her happy. I was letting her down continually. So then, therefore, I'm not enough. I'll never be enough to her. And on top of that, I start to hold hard feelings towards her, and she starts to have hard feelings towards me because we're both miserable. I'm miserable now. She's miserable. And so we made an agreement early on that you're going to work on you and I'm going to work on me, and we're going to come together and compare notes. We're going to do these things. And so in that, Annie's allowed me to go to Peru and spend time with a shaman by myself and do ayahuasca. I've allowed Annie to go to women's retreats with all these crazy ladies and learn about her in her time and read books. But we always come back together. And the thing that I like about this is when I come back, I'm like, guess what I learned about myself? And she's patient enough and wise enough to hear what I have to say. And I try to slow down enough to hear what she has to say. And so that's a big one, is you can't make anybody happy. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the coin, she can't make me mad. I'm in charge of me being mad.
Well, you're in charge of your reactions.
Right. And so if I take that responsibility for my emotions, and I'm in charge of making myself mad or making myself happy, then I can't be blaming of Annie. God, I can't believe she did that. It makes me so mad. Well, that's my choice. That's my decision to be that way. And Annie, we've never used these words towards each other, but I think she believes that too. Like, if she wants to be mad about the fact that I'm leaving my shoes out, then it's her choice. And she's made that choice. She's like made that choice. Like, well, I'm just not going to let that bother me. I have other things that I can worry about. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah,
still put your shoes away, but yeah.
I'll just if it's in my way, if I'm going to trip on those shoes in the middle of the night, then I'll just move them to his side so he can trip on them, like not intentionally, but I don't want
intentional.
I try to be intentional about my happiness. Like Rob said, I'm deciding. And so if it's going to bother me that he puts his shoes out, I get to make a choice. I can put them away because I don't want them out. But that's not really what's bothering me. It's not bothering me that they're out. It's bothering me that he doesn't care enough to put them away. But I can't change him. I can nag him to the point that he's going to do it because he doesn't want to hear me nagging anymore. But I don't want that either. I just don't want to trip on these shoes, really. Like, it's fine. So the best choice is pick up those shoes and just move them over. He can deal with those shoes when he wants to. The dishes, on the other hand, I don't just leave dirty dishes in the sink. If he's left dirty dishes in the sink, I've made a choice I don't like that. They're in the sink, and so I'm going to put them in the dishwasher. But I'll leave them in there until I feel like doing it. So this is the hardest thing for people to...
For women.
For humans to do. Women. Is if you want real change, if you want real happiness in any aspect of your life, it's taking personal responsibility for what is your part.
Agreed. That's true.
It's not blaming. If you're going to blame and be a victim, then you're always going to be miserable because nobody's going to change for you. Nobody cares about that for you. But if you really want happiness you say, well, what part of this is mine? Well, I want the dishes clean or put away because that's important to me. Rob's over there watching TV and enjoying his evening, and I can either go do that with him and leave the dishes, because obviously he doesn't care that they're dirty. So I have to make a choice. Why am I worried about these dishes? For me, for my happiness, or because I think that he will be mad if I don't do the dishes? Because a lot of us do that, right? Well, I better get this done because they're going to be mad. We're making these covert contracts. And so just deciding what's my part, why am I doing what I'm doing, having this intention and communicating about it is very important.
Well, I think you make a very good point there, okay? One of the things that I really admire about both of you is that you guys are constantly striving to grow and learn, all right? And you've allowed each other to do that in your own lanes. I think one of the biggest mistakes to what you just said, the covert contracts, right? Most people, they get into a pattern, and they just kind of, as a guy, you're just looking for the path of least resistance of getting through that. Well, I better pick up my shoes. It's not it's not because it's where I want them or anything like that, but you're looking for the easiest way to make sure that there isn't a fight. But you guys are actively trying to seek and be better for yourselves so that you're better for each other. And I think that's a very important piece of background behind you guys and the people that are listening to this. So finding this, I would imagine that your life path, because of this, you guys do a lot of this that goes on, where it's because you're going down this path and I'm learning about this. Well, at the same time, you're in the learning about this. And so it's this constant kind of trying to find a way to weave all this knowledge together and finding these secrets. And you're saying stuff, I'm focusing on my happiness, but the other question is you're asking, well, why do I even care about this? Okay, why does this actually matter to me? And that's a very big, important thing that I think a lot of people, they're not asking that. They're not asking why they're doing something or what they're trying to accomplish for their partner. That's a huge, huge point. You got to ask why, and you got to try to figure this out together.
I agree. I like that we are weaving and swerving and coming together. I used to say this years and years ago. I realized that we are growing, and sometimes my rate of growth is a lot quicker than Rob's, and sometimes his is quicker than mine. But at the end of the day, as long as we're growing in the same direction, mm-hmm. and you can grow apart, but most of the time it's because one partner doesn't want to take personal responsibility, is going to be a victim and blame and not do anything to grow, and the other one is actually growing. That's usually mm-hmm. when couples grow apart. And in our relationship, it hasn't been equal growth, but that we're both going in the same direction is what makes it.
Well, you guys are a tree, mm-hmm. right? You're growing, and then you got all these different branches and everything growing out, and different paths and different hobbies or whatever it is, but you still have the base. Mm-hmm. And you're still growing in the same direction.
Absolutely.